From theexpress.co.uk, Nigel Farage. The PM has cosied up with big mates from rich banks to stitch up the EU vote. Nigel Farage today accused the Prime Minister of cosying up to his big mates from the world's richest banks in order to sway the EU referendum in his favour. David Cameron has spent this week at an exclusive summit between business leaders and politicians at the posh Davos ski resort in Switzerland. Delivering a keynote speech, Mr. Cameron pleaded with those business leaders attending the World Economic Forum to play a big role in supporting his campaign for Britain to remain in a reformed EU. The Tory leader is widely expected to urge Britons to vote to remain tied to Brussels at the incoming in-out referendum, once he's been granted a deal on his renegotiation of the UK's membership of the 28-country bloc. Mr. Farage claimed that rather than addressing the problems with the EU, the Prime Minister had instead been focusing on getting his big corporate mates to fund the campaign for Britain to remain in the EU. This week, investment bank Goldman Sachs is reported to have donated a substantial six-figure sum to the pro-Brussels Britain Stronger in Europe group chaired by former Marks & Spencer boss Lord Rose. Fellow banking giant JP Morgan has also said to have handed a cheque for hundreds of thousands of pounds to the Lord Rose campaign. Mr. Cameron attended the Davos summit to help push his case for EU reform with other European leaders before travelling to Prague to meet Czech President Milos Zeman. But asked what the Prime Minister was likely to have achieved from his trip on his long-running efforts to reform Britain's relationship with the EU, Mr. Farage quipped 3/5 of 5/8 of very little. Speaking on his LBC Radio Phone Farage show, the UKIP leader said the only success Mr. Cameron had was to get his big corporate mates to say, "We're going to back you, Prime Minister." He added, already this week, Goldman Sachs have announced a big donation to the Keep Britain in the EU campaign. JP Morgan have decided they're going to put a big lump of money into keeping us part of the EU. He's with his big mates in Davos, who will shove millions into his campaign to keep us into the EU. And what you've got here is the unholy alliance of the big banks and big politics. Those very same banks have behaved appallingly and had to be bailed out back in 2008. They're going to tell us what to do in the future, and my advice is we should ignore them. Mr. Cameron's hopes of keeping Britain in a reformed EU suffered a blow as film legend Sir Michael Caine warned the Prime Minister he would have to win extremely significant changes in his EU reform bid. The Oscar-winning actor said he currently believes Britain should be out of the EU, while former Conservative leader Michael Howard claimed it was not looking very likely we're going to see a genuinely reformed EU, as he signalled he's also ready to back Brexit.